new beginning.
Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. My name is Sean Ram alongside Dr. Joshua Black. Another great episode today. We have all these episodes where we get to speak to some pretty interesting people. And today we have on Aditi Loveridge, and she is a certified life coach, mindfulness meditation teacher, and owner of Pregnancy Loss Healing. Aditi supports mothers in their journeys after pregnancy or infant loss. Her work includes supporting mothers who have recently experienced loss, are trying to conceive after loss of any kind, like a pregnancy, infant loss, failed IVF, missed adoption, pregnancy again after loss, and those still struggling after the birth of their baby. Aditi helps mothers who have experienced loss to reconnect with trust so that they can step beyond anxiety and fear. So her Facebook is at Pregnancy Loss Healing, and Instagram is at Pregnancy Loss Healing, and her website is www.pregnancylosshealing.com. Aditi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on. It's been a while since one of my good friends, Dr. Crean Seeley, that you know, reached out and said, "Oh, like this would be a great guest." So I'm so excited to sort of like hear who you are, your journey, and why you do what you do, because she's had the pleasure to already know that stuff, and so it's still kind of a mystery for me. So I'm excited to learn a little bit about you.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want me to tell you about me, or?
Yeah, I'll follow up with a question. So what came first in your journey? Was it the life coach, the mindful meditation, or the pregnancy loss healing? So which one was first in the journey?
Actually, none of those. I in my previous work, I used to work as a social worker, and that sort of started out the journey to lead me here. So I was a social worker, working particularly in women's sexual health. And then I decided to try and get pregnant for the first time. And then that's when I had my experience with pregnancy loss. And then that shifted my career path.
Wow. And so what was the pregnancy loss like for you?
Well, it was my first experience of motherhood. So my husband and I decided to try to get pregnant, and we got pregnant, and that first pregnancy ended in loss. So it was my very first experience of motherhood, which really changed the way that I think that I've been able to experience motherhood from what I thought that it would be like and from what it actually has been like for me. It really increased a lot of fear and anxiety in my subsequent pregnancies. Even still to this day, I tell my clients I definitely live with anxiety. It's just that now I have tools that I can manage it better. But it's definitely impacted everything about me.
Wow. Could you go, I guess, through sort of the beginning stages of that, in the sense of what it was like for you and your relationship at that time?
Like my relationship with my partner, my husband.
Yeah.
I think, like, when you're an adolescent and you first start learning about sex and pregnancy and building a family and those kinds of things, you work so hard over those years to not get pregnant. So it was quite a shock. And neither of us, when we decided to try to start building a family, it never even crossed our mind that pregnancy loss was even a possibility at that time. And so it affected our relationship because we were also fairly newly married. And it just affected everything about us, because I started to get very anxious. I started to have a distrust in my body. My husband, he didn't experience the physical loss, so he didn't quite know how to support me through that. He was very supportive, and he definitely felt grief in his own way. But it was definitely a trying time in terms of how did we move through that journey together. And there was often times where we definitely felt disconnected from one another.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine what that would be like. because you're not, it's like in school, you're not trained that this stuff really even happens. It's like, and like, it's interesting once I started figuring out about, like, even people started talking about miscarriage and stuff, then I finally asked my mom, and my mom has. I was like, oh wow. And other people I know have. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, because I just thought like you, once you want to have kids, you just try and it happens. It's like magic. But there's so much this other stuff along the way that a lot of people have to deal with.
Yes, absolutely.
And so for that, so I'm glad are you guys still together then?
Oh yeah, yes, we are.
So what was it like for you guys going through that together? Did you build a stronger bond? Like, how did you guys find a way to cope through that?
Yeah, so we had my first pregnancy ended in loss, and then my second pregnancy ended in loss as well. And so I think the first one, there was a period of disconnection, and then with our second one, we really started to communicate more. So he allowed himself, I think, to actually be vocal about how he was feeling, which I think for him, and I can't fully speak for him, but I think for him it was very difficult, for even more so for him, because he didn't go through the physical loss, and so he was expected to be at work and just engage in life in the exact same way. And so he actually started opening up to me about that, and how there was grief and there was fear, like, are we ever going to have children, and did he want to see me experience that again, because it was very difficult physically and emotionally, and he wanted to be the rock. And so he started speaking to me about it, and I started speaking to him about our fears. And so we kind of communicated and let the other person know that, hey, we're having these fears, and I could hold some of his fears, he could hold some of mine, and we didn't feel so alone in the process. And we actually, after the second loss, and then when we became pregnant for the third time with our child, our living child, we just got really close, a lot closer, just because we allowed ourselves to be real and vulnerable and talk about it.
Wow, that's amazing. And, just thinking about what you're talking about, and even my own limited experience in what you guys are talking about on this topic of, miscarriages. I feel like it's a bit shocking that, finally at this age, I'm 34, starting to understand more about it and hear more stories and really learn more about it. Whereas when I was younger, there wasn't that much information on it, and it was definitely, it wasn't normalized as other types of losses. So it's, and again, like Joshua said earlier, growing up as a kid, and I don't know, it must, obviously it's different for even being a guy, being a man. You just assume that, okay, people get pregnant and then they have babies, but excuse me. Now, now I see people around me. I have friends who have had miscarriages. I have family members, loved ones, and it's shocking. And I feel a little bit like, um, almost a little bit deceived, almost, that I wasn't given this information earlier. And that just leads me to the question of you guys supporting each other. You must have felt really alone and kind of overwhelmed with all this. And it really, it's amazing to see, though, that both of you were able to kind of start to heal and start to figure things out on your own. That must have been a really scary, lonely time for you guys.
Yeah, it really was. It was very, very lonely, very isolating. Our friend circle, we were the only married couple in our friend circle, so we were definitely the only ones who were now trying to build a family and then experiencing loss. So yeah, it definitely felt very isolating and just very difficult, because when you feel like you're the only ones going through it, it makes it even that much harder.
And what did you find was helpful, I guess the most, from the experiences that you had as a couple? What was Where was it where you found comfort during that very, like, confusing, kind of ambiguous time, and really, fearful and being alone? What were some of those things that maybe brought you guys together?
So I think what brought, this might sound counterintuitive, but I think what brought us together was that we both understood that we needed different things to move through the journey and to move through the grief. Because the way that my husband grieved and the way that I was grieving and what that looked like was very different. And so I think we respected each other's like own path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Again, because as a man, he's not going through the same type of physical loss that you're going through. There are differences, and so it's interesting to see that, as an outsider who's never gone through any of that, to kind of see. And again, I've had male friends, sibling brother who's gone through this type of loss in their life, and it's always, then it falls on another side of it, is how do I support that person? How do I support a man moving forward who's had loss like that? How do I support a friend who's female? So I think we'll obviously get into that a little bit.
Yeah, and it just looked different. So I find that in the beginning when we were going through it, and my husband, went, was going to work and wanting to socialize and things like that, where I needed to be off of work, and socializing for me was a big struggle. In the beginning, I found myself being upset with him, and like he didn't care about what we had experienced. That's the kind of the message I was receiving. But then after communicating and talking it through with him, I realized that that was his way of coping. And so that's what I mean by like the way that he moved through the grief was to keep himself busy. And for me, I needed to sit with it differently.
Did you ever see someone or go to a coach or someone to help you work through this stuff, or meditate during this time to help you personally?
So I had accessed in here in Calgary. They have a program. I had accessed them one time, and it was helpful for what it was. It was just a different type of healing. It was a social worker, so it was a different than what I was seeking, I think, at that time. What really helped me, it was, yeah, meditation. So I've grown up with a father he's meditated for years. He's kind of always brought it up throughout my life, and I've dabbled in meditation over the years. But through my loss journey is where I actually really built a very, very strong meditation practice, and I personally believe that is what saved me and continues to save me in this life. Meditation's a very pivotal tool that I use.
Wow, that's great. And it's great that, you picked up some tools along the way, didn't really use them until you needed to. And so, I guess what the job of a parent, is to provide some opportunity of tools for you to use. And then hopefully when you need them, they're there for you to try and to look back on. So that's great. He provided you that, and that you've sort of took it on and it's helped you so much. And so you mentioned one thing that I never even thought of, but the distrust you had for your body. Could you just like explore that a little bit more, and maybe what you went through and maybe what you hear other women go through?
Yeah, it's something I hear a lot with my clients and in the community. I felt like, again, when I thought back of being a young girl, and you're told about pregnancy, and it's a given. It's like women, when you become a woman and you become pregnant and you give birth to a living child. There was never discussion of anything else outside of that. So when I experienced the first loss and then the second loss, I really felt a distrust to my body. Like, this is the one thing I was taught and raised as a woman that I should be able to do, and I can't do that. Everyone's like, oh, it's natural, it comes naturally, and there was not there for me. That wasn't the case, and so I hear that a lot in the work that I do, is that there's this distrust. like you feelings of your body working against you and failing you.
Wow, that's got a lot of that's got a lot to unravel, because again, it touches on how I think that we're just not prepared the way we should be prepared. And again, even less, I'm going to generalize, but as a man, you're even less prepared, because you're not even going through it physically, like in the same sense as a woman would. And it just shows, I think, it lends to our culture and maybe some things we need to fix as well. Whereas I think we, again, creating a space where people can talk about it more, can share with other people, can communicate with other people, like other types of losses. Again, people don't want to talk about pregnancy loss like that, miscarriages and whatnot, because again, it's not kind of part of the daily norm. Like, if you're talking about even like how we communicate with social media, not everybody's kind of obviously sharing good things and positive things, and people maybe don't want to share those things, which we should be sharing. We should be communicating, hopefully, if we're comfortable enough with the people around us who will support us as well. So you must have felt even more kind of like taken aback by that. But yeah, that's pretty it's shocking, but it's also it's amazing in a crazy way how you said that your body kind of took a different turn and did something that you didn't expect it to. And now moving forward from that and seeing this type of trauma hit you, and then kind of have to come to terms with that. That's pretty incredible. I'm just looking at your bio here. What are some issues that people with pregnancy loss have that we might not know about, including the one that you just talked about?
Well, I think there's probably a lot. I think once you experience pregnancy loss, your relationship with yourself really changes. So yeah, there's that distrust of body. You kind of then you just second guess yourself a lot, even as a couple, because there's also male infertility that can also be a factor sometimes. And it changes this dream. So then you question, well, how badly do I want this? Do I want this? When you're trying to conceive, every time you're trying to conceive again, and when you're not pregnant, it feels like it is another loss that you have to deal with on top of it, because it just feels like it's getting that much further away from you. And what I think a lot of people don't understand is when you're pregnant again after previous loss, what society sees is, oh, you're pregnant. Like, yay, you should be so happy. And what I see, what I've known personally and what I see in my work is that more than often is that pregnancy after loss is a very, very complex time. It increases substantial anxiety, fear, and worry of another loss. And it also increases your anxiety and fear and worry of death in general. So even when you birth a living, healthy child, those feelings don't always just go away, especially if you have not given yourself the space and time to work through it.
That's a great point. Can you actually walk us through that? What was it like sitting in society, having people kind of walk, even especially even after the first one, even maybe during the second time that you had the loss, and people are expecting something of you, or it seems like that, people go into a certain mode, like a pregnancy mode, a joyous mode. Everybody's kind of happy and creating this type of vibe for you again, but you've just experienced obviously a loss, and you still have that in your mind. What's that like, watching everybody around you and coming to terms with that? Like, do you at moments have some negative feelings attached with that?
I remember, so I was pregnant with my now 5-year-old child, and I remember sitting at my baby shower, and the room was full of people, and full of all of these women there to support me and love me, and I was a nervous wreck. I hadn't felt the baby move as often as I had come to feel comfortable with. But everybody was so joyous, and so I felt so alone, and I was so disconnected from the experience. And even when I look back now to the baby shower, I there wasn't a lot of joy in it because I was so anxious. I kept waiting the entire time that you're pregnant after previous loss. The world is looking at you so excited and with joy, but you are all constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing that because again, like I don't get to hear that side very often. And I'm sure if I don't hear it, there's a lot of other people who don't hear it, you know, and there really is a different side of that story that I think a lot of women probably have that as well. Those feelings and emotions that come with that. You know, I just see what's been shown to me, and that's, step A to step B to step C. Okay, pregnancy, everybody's happy. Okay, even if someone's had a miscarriage or something in the past, okay, you don't dwell on that, you don't talk about it. Okay, everybody moves forward, and then keep up that positive, happy kind of vibe going on. But to hear it from you, to hear from your words from a mother, and to talk about how uncomfortable, anxious, worried you were, that's crazy. It's crazy to hear because I again, I don't hear it that often.
Yeah, and that's a part of it is that I always say to like the community and my clients is that I fully believe the only way that we can end the stigma and the isolation around pregnancy and infant loss is for us to talk about it. So like you see sometimes and maybe you have never come across this, but on the internet, there's a lot of blogs, so forth, written where it might say like the top 5 ways to support someone who's gone through a miscarriage. And I always ask the community, have you seen those? And everyone's like, yes. And I said, who do you think are reading those? And it's us. It's the women and families that have experienced pregnancy and infant loss that are reading them. There's a small percentage of people out there who are genuinely looking for better ways to support bereaved families, but the majority of people are us, the ones who have experienced it ourselves. And what those articles do is often it just makes us angry, like, oh, we weren't supported that way, and I wish I had. So it just makes us feel quite angry. So, but I believe the only way we can actually change the dialogue with pregnancy and infant loss is to talk about it and really talk about the impact, the long-lasting impact that this type of loss and grief has on us, so that the world can understand how much of an impact miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth actually has on parents.
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do here too by talking about this topic, because at the end of the day, I've never really talked about it with someone who's going through it. And even when you said like when you're expecting actually the birth to go through for your third child, and even at the even before the birth happened, you had a lot of anxiety. I thought that was interesting because like one would think, oh, you're going to give birth this time, how exciting, let's be excited for you. And because even if you know about your losses, but like people aren't, you said, like getting the understanding that you don't even think this one is going to go through either. Like, because you have so much experience with loss, it's just like your expectation now is that something's going to go wrong somewhere soon. And I think that's a great insight for you that I think a lot of people would never even put that together. And so for us, or for people moving forward, what are some ways that we can help people who experience miscarriage and are grieving, or they're trying to conceive again? Like, what are some tips that you can give people?
I think for like being like what you are doing here today is being like starting the dialogue, starting the conversation, asking questions. I think a lot of the times we don't want to upset or offend people, so we tend not to like go there. But going there isn't going to make that person upset. They're already experiencing that. What going there is going to do is show them that like, I haven't forgotten that you had loss, and it probably is still sitting like heavy on your heart, even though maybe you're pregnant again or any of those things. So just being honest. And then if you say the wrong thing, being honest and be like, okay, hold on, I didn't mean to say that, right? Let me start over again. I think honesty goes a long, long way. I think just showing up for people is like the biggest thing. And just like how you have said in this podcast is that, wow, I didn't know that because I never had the opportunity to talk to somebody about that. And I think being honest about that and just being like, I never saw it that way. I think that just helps because it makes that person in their experience feel seen and feel heard.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because just asking the questions to people and what they need and furthering that dialogue. And they said also just bringing it up, because when a lot of people do forget in the beginning, as they move forward. So I'm curious. So now that we're talking some more, I just have further questions about your loss. And so I think there's a big difference too, in the sense of, because I lost, my father, and the one thing that people always, or I get to post on, or I get to comment on, or people will say something about, is the day he died. And so do you have like a death anniversary? Like, is that something that you have in your mind, or like how does that work now with miscarriage?
Yeah, yes, for sure. I have December 26th was my first, and October 3rd was my second. They're the days that I gave birth, just unfortunately not to a live baby. So people who are supporting family members or friends that have had loss, I think those kind of anniversary dates are really important. Sending a card or just checking in when it was around that time, maybe even. And a lot of people, if it's a later loss, so if it's a later loss, a lot of people name the babies because it is a baby. Like if it was like a 38-week stillbirth, that baby has a name. That baby probably had a funeral. So for families supporting or friends supporting it, saying that baby's name, acknowledging that was the date that they gave birth and entered the world, unfortunately not breathing. Those are really significant for pregnancy and infant loss parents.
Did you say December 26th was your Memorial Day? Wow, so right at the holidays?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's always bitter.
Wow. So you talk about that a bit? Like, so do you still find those like feelings come up around the holidays?
Yes, every year for sure, especially on the 26th when, the house is more quiet and the hustle and bustle of Christmas is gone. On the 26th morning, I always wake up and I remember, and I always let my husband know, and we just have a little acknowledgement, and I usually post about it on my social media. That's my kind of way of, my work is sort of my way of parenting these babies that I didn't get to parent, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very emotional sentiment and a very beautiful one as well.
And so I'm curious, on your journey, have you ever had a dream of any of the children that you lost?
Yes. So I had a dream after I lost the second pregnancy. I had a dream of my grandfather, who has passed, and I had a dream, and he was holding this baby boy, and he was saying we're together, and I have your child, and I'm looking out.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So and after that dream and my experience with the second pregnancy loss, it kind of gave me the courage to be able to then go forward and try again.
Oh wow. That's wild. That is absolutely wild. And you had this, did you have this before you knew about the miscarriage, or is it after?
It was after. It was like a couple of days after I had that loss. Yeah.
Wow. And so so you said it gave you the courage to pursue the next one. Could you talk about it a little bit further?
Yeah.
I think that is really interesting.
Yeah, because, well, my second loss to, I had miscarried naturally at home with that one, and that whole experience, I've written about it a few times and spoken about it. It was quite an empowering experience, and that might sound strange, but it gave me the trust that I had lost in my body. It gave that somewhat back to me, because I was able, even though it wasn't a living baby, my body still very much knew how to let go. And so it was an interesting experience, a very spiritual kind of experience for me. And so that experience, and then I had that dream a couple of days later where my grandfather was saying, I have this baby and I'm looking out for you, and I'm taking care of this baby. The whole thing all around just gave me the courage and made me feel like I was supported by something greater than what I could see.
Oh wow, that's actually amazing. It's so wow. You felt supported in your loss.
Yeah, and it was a very, very complex but very, very deep. It was a very deep emotional experience for me, because I felt supported, in loss, and empowered in this crazy way. I felt very empowered, even though I had just given birth to a baby that was not living and all of that, but I felt very empowered, and that is what gave me the strength to say, okay, I think I can do this one more time.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. You just, just to unpack that, you look at what's going on in your life at the time, the tremendous loss, the emotions, the feelings, and like any other loss, like, especially this one, which is even more unique, and probably you feel even more isolated compared to like a different type of loss. And here comes this, experience tied with a dream that you've had, and that's giving you the strength to kind of push forward. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, so
it was surreal for sure.
Did you know it was a boy, or was that just something new that you found through the dream?
Yeah, no, I never knew for sure the sex of either of the babies that I lost, but I had a strong feeling that it was a boy.
Wow, that's why I think it's fascinating, because like I've done research with people who have lost through miscarriage, both partner and birth mother, and they have these dreams of the gender, how it looks. Like it's very fascinating to me, because it's saying everything of what it would have looked like. Like honestly, you wouldn't know, right? Like with all these, you just wouldn't know. And so for me, it's like how amazing that is, because it's facilitating this image of what it was, what would have been, kind of thing. And so it almost puts your loss to like a figure in a way, that other losses almost get a chance to do. And so I think it's quite amazing. And then so for that, did you ever name that child?
No, we didn't name either of them. We just called both of our babies, like even when I was pregnant, we would just call them baby Loveridge.
Oh, okay. That's cute.
Yeah. So that was kind of our nicknames for all three, even with my child now. When I was pregnant with him, it was always baby Loveridge.
That's sweet. And so did you have a strong relationship with your grandfather? Did you know him a lot?
I did, and I was actually in the room, in his hospital room, when he took his last breath. So.
Oh wow. And so was this like the first dream you had of him, or have you had dreams of him prior to this?
I have had some dreams here and there, but I've found like whenever I've been kind of going through hardships, I wouldn't necessarily have a dream. He wouldn't come to me in a dream, but he always wore a very distinct cologne, and I would smell his cologne.
And then so when you had those experiences, when you're smelling the cologne, like does it scare you? Does it make you feel supported, like the dream? Like how does that work?
Yeah, it initially, like because my grandfather's been gone for like I think 15 years, quite some time now. But initially, it used to kind of scare me, But
Did you think you're going crazy?
now,
You're like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what it was. I used to feel like I was going crazy. But now when it happens, it's like this deep comfort, especially after like that dream, and then now, because it's like it just makes me feel again more like I'm being supported.
Wow. I'm just curious. When you do your meditations, do you ever get like do you ever smell your grandfather, or do you see like any, do you have any continuing bonds while you're meditating that pop up? Or is it just, your mind is blank?
I haven't had anything of my grandfather, but when I was pregnant with my child, I meditated that. I meditated daily. That was something I didn't sway from at all, and I would get images of what this child would look like, and when they were born, that's like around the age of 1 or 2 was the image that I would get of what they would look like, and I couldn't quite see the face, but I could see like the general like curly hair and physique of this child, and quite clearly, and that's exactly what my child looks like.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Just deep in thought, thinking about what you're saying, and just thinking about all, just the women around the world who've had these miscarriages and pregnancy issues, and that, I haven't had a chance to really hear at the same level of other types of loss. And it is true, like, until you've kind of had your own loss, it's difficult to kind of sit with someone at the same level. I recently lost my grandmother, give or take a couple weeks ago, and it was the first real loss in a long time as an adult that I've experienced, and it was a different, very rich experience. We sat with her as she passed, and it kind of gave me a little more insight into the stories that I hear, the people I talk to, and that's what you've done today as well, is given me a little more insight into what it's like for a woman to go through a loss like that. And I really do have a yearning moving forward to learn more about it. I think as a guy, as a man, and I'd like to maybe obviously just talk to other guys and help them out with that, because I'm obviously it's trying for them as well during that time. But also, I think getting that, learning more and developing more compassion for women and people in our society, our friends, our family around us. I think that's important, because you want to be with people during the tough times as well, during the suffering, and I think people care. I don't think it's a matter of, it's done on purpose, where people kind of, I guess, stigmatize that type of loss. But I think it's time for us to kind of realize that it's important to sit with people during those times as well as the happy times, and to be more aware. And again, you sharing kind of the tips that you've given us on how to maybe talk to people who are dealing with pregnancy loss and miscarriages. That's vital. That's important. And it really is, I think, and just me personally, it's an area in my life that I could definitely use more information and knowledge on. So really appreciate this conversation. That's what I was thinking about.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time and having the conversation. It definitely means a lot to me, and I know to the community.
I'm curious now. So you had the miscarriages, you had the birth of your son. When did you start saying, you know what, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna start helping these people and start your own pregnancy loss healing platform?
When I was pregnant with my child, I knew that I just was like, this is crazy. There needs to be more support, and I can't imagine I'm the only one having these emotions in pregnancy after loss. So I decided to become a doula, and I became a doula like 4 months after I gave birth. And I never advertised, loss on my doula website or anything like that. But as the universe has it, every family that I had supported in my doula work had a history of loss. And what I saw, especially in the postpartum, what I saw was that even after you give birth to a living, healthy baby, there's still all this complex emotions. There's grief, there's fear, there's anxiety still that still presents. And so again, I was like, oh, there just needs to be more. And with my social work background, I definitely wanted to focus on mental health. And then I did a life coach certification. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it. But then a very good friend of mine was pregnant, and she found out, I think it was around 24 weeks, that her daughter Willa wasn't going to live. And so she asked me to attend the birth, and I attended that birth and got to meet her daughter, which was quite an honor. And I was the only one who got to meet her daughter. And so from there, then I saw her navigate the journey after loss. And I saw, again, the same things that were coming up for me in mine, was that how there was a lot of isolation, after those 3 to 6 months after the initial loss, when everyone else returns back to normal and you're still kind of here trying to figure out what's going on. Do I want to try again, or what this road after loss looks like? There wasn't a lot of support. And then it just became very clear. I was like, okay, I'm going to start coaching women through this. So I threw it up online, and I was like, if I'm the only one who needs the support, maybe I'll find out now. And turns out that I am not the only one who needed this type of support. A lot of women out there did. And so then my business continued to grow. And as of last week, I now also am the founder and owner of a nonprofit organization here in Calgary. It's for pregnancy and infant loss support center, and it's going to be a center where the community can come build their community and have access to holistic healing modalities to support their journey after pregnancy and infant loss.
Wow, it's amazing. Look at you go. You're a woman on a mission. I like that. And it's good to sort of hear about how that all sort of played out. And it's interesting, right? Like said, you didn't know what it was for, then doors open and things keep opening, and you realize sort of what people are lacking in our society, and you're there to really provide them that experience or raise awareness that it exists in their community, which I think is the beautiful journey that you're on, and it has so much love and compassion wrapped all into that, and you get to honor your own losses. So I think that is phenomenal. I'm really curious, you've seen a lot of women. Have you ever seen any men? Like, do men ever come to talk to you?
So I have had 1 or 2 male partners come, usually when the woman is pregnant again. That's usually when I see them. And then just because of the work that I do, a lot of men, through casual conversation, not through formal coaching work, but through casual conversation, have come to me and shared a bit about their experience and their take on how they moved through the journey and how it impacted them as a male experiencing it.
That's good. Yeah, I know, just even in support groups in general, from working and volunteering at different hospices, it's usually women that go. And that's why I was really curious to see if it's probably just women that also go and seek the help from you. That's interesting. I'm curious.
Yeah.
My last question before I think Sean can take over and is, have you ever had people comment on their dreams that they have? Because I know they can have nightmarish images and also can have these beautiful dreams that you had. Have you ever asked about them, or has anyone ever brought them up in your sessions?
Yeah, dreams actually get brought up a lot, which is why when you were brought up, I was like, oh, this is really fascinating, because yeah, in both circumstances. So a lot of times when a woman finds herself pregnant again after loss, she might have a nightmarish dream of losing again. Oftentimes they'll contact me and say, I had a dream and there was all this blood, and I woke up and I was freaked out, and is this a sign that I'm going to lose baby? And sometimes then on the flip side, they have a similar dream to mine, not necessarily with another person who's passed, but where they get images of them being very pregnant, or image of their baby that they're might be carrying, or future baby, and that feels good. Or they get a sign in their dream, like they were looking at something and then a beautiful rainbow, or a bird, or something to that effect that is personal to them, that signifies like hope, will come into the dream. So dreams actually get brought up quite frequently.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I like how you're saying the almost a traumatic reenactments of losing the baby. People have
Mm-hmm.
a tendency to kind of think that it's precognitive in a way, you know?
Yes, that's usually
Um,
when I've done a lot of sessions around that. Like they always are like, is this a prediction of what's coming?
wow. And that just goes towards what you're saying about the fear people have when they are currently
Mm-hmm.
carrying, right? Just like it's throughout their dreams too. And you can't run away from it. It's just like staring in the face. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So if you ever, want more information on this, I haven't wrote anything up yet for publication when it comes to the miscarriage losses, but we can talk off air about some of that stuff, and hopefully it can help you and your clients as you work through some of these maybe negative dreams or even the positive
Yeah,
dreams.
I would love that.
All right, Sean, you want to wrap this
Yeah,
up with
yeah,
the last question?
absolutely. And just listening to this, listening to you speak, it just shows the strength. Talking about your journey from having losses like these to overcoming them and dealing with them through different techniques, through your regular meditation practice. It's just amazing. You don't, again, you're a tremendously strong person to go through what you've gone through, and then to kind of take what you've gone through and want to then share it with other people, impact other people, help them through their loss. I mean, that just ups the ante even more and shows what type of person and character you have. So which is obviously a tremendous one, that it can come help society out and walk people through that journey that you've taken. I wonder, actually, before we wrap up, just what do you think about your life now, and think about the journey that you've gone through? How do you view that?
Oh, that's
That's a good
that's
question.
a tough question. I think the journey, when I think about my journey, I definitely feel like the only thing I can think of is that loss changes you. I mean, we all, the three of us and your listeners, know that they've come here because they've experienced loss. Loss changes you. You're different when you've experienced loss, but for me, I think my journey shows me that perhaps I needed to be
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, you look at that loss and you see what scar it's left, and you just see it for what it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's wrap up with the last question, which is, if you could have a dream of a loss that you've had tonight, if you could have a grief dream, what would that dream look like?
I think I would like to have a dream where two babies that I don't get to parent here on Earth are with all the other little angel babies who I've gotten to meet through my work, and they're all just growing and laughing and just being together and looking down on us and being proud of the people that we are now.
Yeah, playing baby games.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful image. I like that.
I'm
And I'm,
curious, would you want them to be the ages that they would be now? Because I know some women have dreams of like the child at their age. Would they be now after the miscarriage? Or do you want them to be like real babies, like, 1-year-old running around?
I think for me it would be babies. Yeah, for the dream. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So what
It'd be
age would that?
interesting though.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see them as the
Yeah.
age, because my first one would have been 7. No, sorry, my first one would have been 8. So it would be interesting to see like who they became.
Yeah, and like the ages will change the games they play. Like
Yeah, and what they're
yeah.
doing. Yeah.
Right, like a newborn. What do you got? Hide and seek? That's or peekaboo? Like what do you like?
Totally.
That's cool. That's interesting. Wow. And so what's the setting? Like, what would that look like? Would it be like a park? Would it be like what do you want this sort of a billion babies to be playing in?
When you said that, I just pictured like this white backdrop of like, I don't know.
Like in the Matrix where they bring out all the guns?
Okay.
Yeah,
not with the guns, but just like a plain white flag.
Babies
I
and
don't know,
guns.
when I pictured it, I pictured just like this white space of like a pureness, because that to me, like, children are so pure, right?
Right.
So I didn't picture them in one particular setting. It was more just like this space of pure love, joy. That's what it was for me.
So basically winter in Calgary.
Yeah. Yeah, as I'm looking out my window.
I like it.
Yeah.
Where there is no cold, just soft, fluffy clouds.
Yes. Yes. Totally.
Wow. Well, it's amazing having you on. Again, just thinking about all the different women who've gone through the same experiences you've gone through, the women you've helped. And I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that and really taste it and really feel the loss and really get an idea of that. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, it is, as a male, as a guy, I don't normally have those conversations. And also thanks for sharing something that again is not normally talked about in regular society. Again, we'd like to hopefully do that more and more often, and I'm sure hopefully someone listening kind of felt that and got some peace and enjoyed the episode and felt a little better if they're themselves are going through that. And again, I recommend anybody listening who's going through any of that to reach out to you through your website, www.pregnancylosshealing.com. Aditi, can you actually share some of your other handles so listeners can find you out?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, which is at Pregnancy Loss Healing, and I'm on Facebook at Pregnancy Loss Healing. And if you wanted to read more about my personal story, I am a co-author in a book that is going to be available on Amazon coming out in May. So I will be posting about that on my social handles as well.
Amazing. And you do one-on-one work where do you work in town? And then also, do you take call-ins or Skype phone calls?
Yes. So I work here in Calgary. I take one-on-one clients at 2 locations right now. It will be going down to 1 when my the nonprofit, I'm going to just be seeing clients there. So it's in the northeast side of Calgary. And then I've got clients all across Canada. I have a couple in the States as well. So I do over the phone, like FaceTime, Skype, or Zoom calls as well. So basically anywhere you are, we can connect.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And you have such great energy to you. And I can see why Kareen likes you so much. So thank you, Kareen. Shout out to you. Thank you for setting this all up. Really appreciate it. I learned so much. I learned so much from you that, you just don't think about it until people say certain comments or, like it just put in a certain way and you hear about the experience. You're like, oh, like, I didn't know. And I love those moments for me where I can learn a little bit more about what people go through in loss and things to be aware of as I move forward, just in this topic in general.
Oh, and I thank you so much for doing the work that you do, and then for bringing loss and death to a conversation, and pregnancy loss to the conversation as well. And I just really, really appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you. And actually, I want to also thank you again for acknowledging the dreams people are having during this loss, because dreams in general are just ignored. And so I can only imagine after pregnancy loss. So, thank you for also doing that and asking the questions to these people that come in, because I know it's probably the first time they ever really get a chance to talk about that. So once again, beautiful. Sean, anything left?
No. Again, I think I said what I needed to say. I learned a lot, and moving forward, again, it just makes us more compassionate human beings, compassionate people, to, again, other people in our society. So again, thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
All right, to wrap up with our stuff now, if you want to check out griefdreams.ca for more information on the topic. On there, we recently put on a donation button, and so there's different perks if you want to donate, or you also go to Patreon. It's also on there. Also, we have a Grief Dreams Facebook group. So if you've experienced even any kind of loss and you've had these dreams, that's a group for you to be able to post these dreams and read others. We always love hearing new stories and new dreams that have come up. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram at Grief Dreams. And I also did a children's book called Dream of Owl that's out on Amazon. Man, this list keeps getting longer. All right, so I think that's everything that we have to promote on our end. But once again, thank you for listening to the podcast. We always appreciate the listens, and if you enjoy the podcast, please share it to someone else. You never know what people are going through and what they need in their own time. So we like to end with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.